The story is about Marc Bergevin. Marc Bergevin made himself and the Montreal Canadiens by proxy the story of the NHL draft by drafting Logan Mailloux at number 31. Now, if you remember this story, he was in Sweden playing hockey. He's a very skilled hockey player. He photographed an intimate moment and shared it with his friends, and it got around and was somehow, I believe, leaked on the internet. Now, the first many of us saw of this was his apology, which he at the time claimed, well, this was honestly, I did this because it was an ego play. I wanted to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, I wanted to share it with my friends and it was wrong and I'm truly sorry. But there are many, many depths to this. The most important part for the Bergevin camp is I don't want to be drafted this year. And unlike other leagues, you can't renounce your eligibility for the draft in the NHL, which I didn't know. People can just take you and you don't have to apply and be eligible, which is pretty interesting and pretty wild. And I think the NHL needs to consider changing that rule to avoid absolute bombs like this one.
That's what Elliot Friedman was talking about.
For context, the NBA, you have up until 10 days to withdraw your rights from the NBA draft if you're eligible. In baseball, you have until like the day or the moment you're drafted to be like, hey, I don't want to be drafted. So
and
the other sports
football
do
too, right? Football.
The football you have to declare as well because you also have university eligibility after 3 years. Like you got to declare yourself for the draft. Yeah,
right.
Do you want me to read a statement?
Please, yeah. Do you have his
Okay. Yeah. So being drafted, he sent this July 20th in the morning.
Yes, and this came because Katie Strang's article came out, and this came out on the same day as a response.
Right. Being drafted into the NHL is an honor and a privilege that no one takes lightly. The NHL draft should be one of the most exciting landmark moments in a player's career, and given the circumstances, I don't feel I have demonstrated strong enough maturity or character to earn that privilege in the 2021 draft. If I were to ever have the honor of being selected, I would want a fan base to be proud to welcome me to their organization. I know it will take time for society to build back the trust I have lost. And that is why I think it is best that I renounce myself from the 2021 NHL draft and ask that no one select me this upcoming week. I feel that this would allow me the opportunity to demonstrate an adequate level of maturity and character next season with the London Knights in the OHL and provide all the NHL teams the opportunity to reassess my character toward the 2022 NHL draft. Logan Mailloux.
Now, let me backtrack on that because there is a Corey Pronman and Katie Strang. Their reporting has been spectacular on this and the Blackhawks and many other things, the Coyotes. But Mailloux also tried to paint the victim as vindictive to both police and NHL teams. And let me read a clip from The Athletic, because obviously that apology, you think, okay, well, boy, you better put in some work. And you better start, like literally, I don't even know where to begin with that. But there's somebody at least saying I did it, and here's why I did it, which is more than what we get from most people. I'm not giving him any credit, but it's literally the base. We don't usually get zero. Like that brings, we don't get that normally. It's more like, oh, well, I'm sorry. This is okay. I did it, and here's why I did it. That's the type of apology bare minimum should be expected.
There's a lot of the reaction is like, so what? He can just never do anything ever again. You know what I mean? And with renouncing himself from the draft, there was a path forward, right? There hasn't been an adequate apology yet, at least in the eyes of the victim, right? There hasn't been an adequate apology. And her opinion is frankly the only one that matters, right?
Yeah.
But there's a path forward here. You got a year to get this right.
Or to start.
And you're going to be playing in the Ontario Hockey League. You're going to be playing in the OHL.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so let me read this, Steve, to add to that point. Pre this statement, Dylan Liptrap, who was one of Mailloux's agents, referred to his original statement on the matter when asked for comment. In a later text exchange, by the way, this is from The Athletic, Katie Strang and Corey Pronman. In a later text exchange, Liptrap offered to provide context on the situation, but stipulated that the information can only be used off the record and couldn't be shared with anyone. Informed that The Athletic was looking for on-the-record information only, Liptrap wrote, "Sounds like the motivation here is very clear." He added he wanted to provide off-the-record context before the angry cancel culture mob gets him in its grasp. In a Daily Face-Off report, Mailloux was quoted as telling Swedish police investigators that he believed the woman wanted to, quote, ruin his life. Multiple sources told The Athletic that in interviews with some NHL teams, Mailloux has portrayed the woman as vindictive. So there's that. Okay. So, initially what they tried to do is say, oh, this is just some crazy person. But it's obviously come out that she's not just some crazy person. She is a victim of a sex crime. And that's what this is. Yep. And so, that is its own story. So I don't want you to confuse what I was saying earlier by saying that he is not the story here. But as it pertains to the NHL, Marc Bergevin is the story. Because in that statement that Steve read, Mailloux said, I don't want to be drafted. I renounce it. Do not want to be there. Give me a year to get started on this. Mm-hmm. And with pick 31 in the 2021 NHL Draft, the Montreal Canadiens selected him. Now, this is one of those situations where, as a fan, I don't know. We talked about the fake Twitter accounts. I was on a road trip, and I thought that somebody was faking this, and I thought it was a shitty joke. I actually thought like it was like a shitty joke, and then beyond that, the rapidity and speed at which the Montreal Canadiens issued a statement, like minutes later. Mm-hmm. So they knew that this was going to happen.
I think they knew the whole time.
Well, and so Trevor Timmons, who was a part of the Montreal scouting staff, gave an interview afterwards and was asked by a reporter, and Jesse, I'm not sure if you have which one, and then we'll get into the discussion on this. I just want to set up the story here.
I do.
Was asked by a reporter,
Marc-Antoine Gaudin.
There you go. Who's actually a great follow.
He is.
Jesse, do you want to go ahead and play the clip?
I definitely can.
In his statement, he says that he thought that he did not earn the right to be drafted. Why? I mean, based on that, if the player thinks that, why do you think the opposite?
Your app hasn't crashed. He just hasn't spoken yet.
What do you mean? What do I think the opposite? Can you expand on that a little bit?
So that was, sorry. I didn't realize it had actually ended. I was used to the long pause from the previous thing.
So how long is that pause? It's 15 seconds?
Oh, no. It's much longer than that.
I keep seeing 21. Long enough.
Yeah.
Long enough.
I don't know if the amount of seconds matters. Long enough. And that's at the end of the second day. And he didn't have an answer. The guy didn't have an answer.
He'd had time to prepare between rounds 2 and 7 to answer that question. Right?
Jesse, do you have what he eventually answered?
No.
I will send it to you. I'll send it to you right away. Because
okay. Now,
I think that's important.
I think it's important here, too, that we read the Montreal Canadiens statement in its fullest. So after this pick's announced, here's what Montreal puts out online. By drafting prospect Logan Mailloux with the 31st overall pick, the Montreal Canadiens organization not only selected a promising hockey player, notice that that's the lead, but also a young man who recently admitted to making a serious mistake. Canadians are aware of the situation and by no means minimize the severity of Logan's action. Logan understands the impact of his actions. How could he yet? It's my question. His recent public statement is a genuine acknowledgement of poor behavior and the first step on his personal journey. We are making a commitment to accompany Logan on his journey by providing him with the tools to mature and the necessary support to guide him in his development. We are also committed to raising awareness among our players about the repercussions of actions on the lives of others. So the first thing I'll say about that statement, there's no mention of the victim.
All right.
There's nothing. And, the Montreal Canadiens PR staff has to put this out because they're at the whim of Marc Bergevin, who's ultimately making the call here. And at no point do the Canadiens organization acknowledge the stigma that will surround her, because I can guarantee you all of her friends and family and everybody she ever went to school with and ever knew knows about this. Okay? Can guarantee you that. Somebody Googles her name 20 years from now, this could still come up. And it's understanding and the lack of understanding of how important and how wrong that is. I'm shocked. Like, the Canadiens, as a token, could have said, we also commit to paying for the therapy of the victim. They could have done anything. They didn't even mention that she exists. It's a young man. He's young. Made a serious mistake. And we're committed to guiding him. What about her? Who's guiding her?
And a lot of people said those were the actions of a 17-year-old, which is true. He was 17. Mm-hmm. The apology came from an 18-year-old. He's 18 right now. He's a legal adult. So stop that shit. Stop all that.
One thing Bergevin said after he was drafted in the press conference, he was describing the actions of Mailloux as unacceptable. Arpon Basu reported that he said it 4 times in 12 minutes. He described what Logan did as unacceptable. But by drafting him, they proved that the Canadiens thought the actions were acceptable, and that even though he feels he doesn't deserve to be drafted, that they can accept what he did and they can grow from there and move on. But if it was actually unacceptable, you wouldn't have accepted it and you would have not drafted him as per his own wishes.
Can I read a quote that I find particularly offensive to that point, Jesse? Would you guys mind? Is that okay? Is this from Bergevin? We understand and we're fully aware of the fully aware, and we as an organization, it's unacceptable, but also it's a young man who made a terrible mistake. So here's the thing. Let me read that one more time because I bungled that sentence. We understand and we're fully aware, and we as an organization find it very unacceptable, but it's also a young man that made a terrible mistake. So you already know that everything before the word but doesn't matter. He's 18 years old, and he's willing and he understands and he's remorseful and he has a lot of work to do, but he's already started to, ready for this, put it behind him and have a hockey career.
Put
it behind him?
The Canadiens organization here, they put common decency behind hockey. They feel like, okay, no matter what, we got a great prospect here, and it doesn't matter what this person did in their personal life or anything, because hockey is over anything. Even being a respectable organization and being respectable people to a person who was victimized. Like, no, none of that stuff comes before hockey, and that's such a shame.
Well, and
Jesse, do you have the clip that I sent you? The Trevor.
You want to play the rest of it?
Yes,
please do.
I'm not sure.
This is important.
It's important because a big part of this whole thing is, but he asked not to be drafted. He asked not to be drafted, right? That should matter. That's a big part of it.
Kind of does matter, right?
What do you mean? What do I think the opposite? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, it's just that if he, he thought that because of his actions, because of where he was at, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, I think I just touched on that, Marc-Antoine. I thought he was emotional when that came out. Maybe today he would think a little differently, but we felt comfortable, with what the information that we have, and with his interview, that we truly believe that he was remorseful, mm-hmm. and we're going to help him through this difficult time, the difficult waters that he has, We have a really good support staff that's going to help him along, and we believe in him and that he'll become a better person from all this.
I'm going to make you listen to that again. I'm going to make you listen to that quote again. I'm going to cut it off. We don't need the whole thing. Sorry, I'm going to make you listen to that quote again because a key part of this, remember I said there's a path forward. You know, he's taking himself out of the draft for a year. There's a start. For at least a year. There's a start. Right? Like there is potential for I don't know what the word is. Reconciliation, perhaps. There's a path forward for him to improve himself, for him to adequately apologize, for him to adequately mature, which is something that he's going for, right? Play the quote again, please, Jesse. This is Trevor Timmins of the Montreal Canadiens, assistant general manager.
What do you mean? What do I think the opposite? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, it's just that if he, he thought that because of his actions, because of where he was at, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, I think I just touched on that, Marc-Antoine. I thought he was emotional when that came out. Maybe today he would think a little differently, but we felt comfortable.
So he was emotional when he sent what, Trevor? The statement where he asked to not be selected in the draft? If he could, he'd maybe handle it differently? Is that what he said? He'd do it a little differently?
Because that negates his entire apology.
Did the assistant general manager of the Montreal Canadiens imply that the player he just drafted is entirely full of shit? That's an awful lot what it sounded like.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead.
Here's another quote you guys are going to find interesting. Timmins said Rob Ramage, the Canadiens' director of player development, has already started working with Mailloux and added that the team's community relations people have a plan in place for him. Here's the quote. I know Logan meets with a lady psychiatrist a couple times a week, and we're looking forward to welcoming him to camp. A lady psychiatrist.
Yeah. And then when they requoted Bergevin, they left out that part. Or sorry, Trevor.
Yeah, Account for Hockey had that.
Yeah,
a lady. Now,
up his words a little.
Yeah, which is bullshit, by the way. Like, I know they did it on purpose, but it's total bullshit. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. This person says that they don't want to be drafted and they need to work on themselves. Let them. But the Montreal Canadiens couldn't. And you know why? Greed. They don't give a shit.
They don't care.
It's greed.
That's exactly it.
If I hit Steve with my car and Steve has to go to the hospital and I get charged with reckless driving and I say to the cops, guys, I didn't mean it. Mm-hmm. They don't drop the fucking charges. Or if I say, guys, I'm so sorry, they don't drop the charges. There are consequences to your actions. And the Montreal Canadiens did not allow for this player and this person, more importantly, to start to make amends for it. And instead, they rewarded him with being the 31st overall pick, which I believe is a first-round pick, is he not?
It is. Yep. It is now. Didn't used to be. Is now.
So he was drafted on Friday. It's the first round.
Yep.
So this is the. By the way, I believe was that not the last pick of that round, or was it?
What happened afterwards was, I assume we'll get to that.
I was on the road. I was on a road trip, so I missed that part.
Oh, you didn't even, Jesse. You want to, Adam? You wouldn't believe it if we showed you. You wouldn't believe it if we showed you.
It was some of the worst 15 minutes in National Hockey League history. After Logan is drafted and the storm happens, Stan Bowman walks out onto stage to announce the Blackhawks draft pick.
Because they traded for the last pick of the round.
They traded for the 32nd pick. So he walks out with 8 women surrounding him. 3 are recent hires by the Chicago Blackhawks, and the rest are within the organization. They're like, we're not trying to denigrate these women or anything they do within hockey. It was just such a blatant PR stunt. And everybody, it was.
So it's patronizing.
It was. Friedge called it out as what it is. It was performative.
It was performative, and it was disgusting to see Bowman there surrounded by these women, just so you can try and distract from a giant sexual assault lawsuit against the organization.
He's trying to discredit this guy, which has nothing to do with the other. By the way, let's just throw that out there.
It was trying to distract, and it was performative, and it was gross, and it was just awful scenes.
Adam, you wouldn't believe the visual if I showed it to you.
I'm gonna have
You would have thought someone photoshopped it.
Anybody watching on YouTube, it's on screen right now.
Okay. I'll be watching it on YouTube along with you. And let me just say this one more time so we're clear. The Montreal Canadiens selected this player because they're greedy. They don't give a shit about the victim. They don't give a shit about the player's development. And in fact, here's what they're going to do down the road. Are you ready for this? They're going to present you a rehabbed and fully reasonable Logan Mailloux, and they're going to say, we did this.
Well, Adam, how about this? What if it doesn't matter? What if it doesn't matter that he's improved himself? What if all that matters is other teams have done bad things too? Do we want to address this crowd?
Sure.
Do we want to address? Well,
just address it quickly.
Yes, I was flooded with it.
Me too. Couldn't turn on my Twitter mentions because it was the only thing I got on Friday.
Yeah,
just trolls from
Leaf
Canadian
fans. Leaf fans don't have a leg to stand on because a pedophile worked at Maple Leaf Gardens for 2 decades. If you're comparing this to that, you might be against the pick. If you're comparing one to the other, why aren't you screaming with your entire chest that the Montreal Canadiens should renounce this pick entirely? Are you joking? Are you well? Are you okay? Do you want to talk? That you think this is okay because other bad things have happened? Like we've brought this up on the show a few times. It's a horrible form of argument, and best case scenario, that's bad too. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Are you a child? Are you an actual child?